My name's Becca, and this happened last summer. After everything fell apart with the divorce, I needed to get away, just me and my son. Somewhere quiet, no drama, no memories. So I booked a small cabin up north, right on a lake in Michigan. It was peaceful, beautiful, exactly what I thought we both needed. He was 13, in that phase where he mostly stayed on his phone, barely looked up. But I didn't push. I let him be. We hiked a little, grilled burgers, watched storms roll in over the water. And every night, I'd sit out on the back deck with a glass of wine, listening to the crickets and the water lapping against the dock. The lake wasn't very big. Directly across from us, maybe 200 feet away, was another cabin. Old, 2 stories, with a slanted roof and a rickety dock that dipped into the water. From the minute we got there, I noticed it looked off. Run down, windows coated in dust, dock half rotted. The owners had clearly abandoned it. Or so I thought. The second night, just as it got dark, I noticed a faint light flicker on in the upstairs window. It caught my eye because the house had looked so dead during the day. No cars, no movement. Yet here it was, soft yellow light glowing just behind the curtain. I stared for a while, trying to figure out if I'd imagined it. Eventually, it turned off. I told myself it must have been a sensor, or maybe a leftover lamp on a timer. Still, I mentioned it at the general store in town the next morning. The old guy behind the counter just shrugged and said, "Probably just some teenagers messing around. That place has been empty for years." He said it casually, like it wasn't even worth thinking about. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next night, it happened again. Same upstairs window, same faint glow. Then off again, like whoever was there didn't want to be seen. And then things got weirder. One morning, I came out to sit by the dock with my coffee. And there were footprints. Wet footprints. Barefoot. Leading from the edge of the dock all the way up to our porch. Like someone had come out of the lake, walked up to the cabin, and then disappeared. I looked around for a boat. Nothing. My son was still asleep. We had no visitors. Later that same day, I found a small wooden toy boat sitting at the edge of the dock. Hadn't been there before. It was old, chipped, the kind of thing you'd find in a dusty attic, not floating across a lake. I didn't say anything to my son. Didn't want to scare him. I just picked it up and tossed it in the fire pit. Told myself it was probably something that drifted in from somewhere upstream. But I knew that wasn't true. 2 nights later, I was brushing my teeth before bed, and I saw something across the lake. A flicker of movement behind the window. Then the light turned on again. I leaned forward, squinting. It stayed on longer this time, and I swear, I could see a figure, just standing there, not moving, just watching. The next morning, I woke up early. Something felt off, like I was being watched even inside the cabin. When I went to open the bedroom curtain, I saw it. A pair of binoculars, lying on the edge of the dock, pointed straight at my bedroom window. My stomach dropped. I marched out there, heart pounding, ready to yell at whoever thought this was funny. But there was no one, just the binoculars, cold, damp, and heavy in my hands. That's when I made the decision to go across the lake. To that house. I wanted answers. I needed to know who was out there. I didn't tell my son. Didn't want to drag him into something that might be nothing. So I waited until he was busy with a movie. Then I took the rowboat and quietly crossed the water. The closer I got, the more rotten that place looked. Shutters hanging off the sides, boards warped and swollen. The dock creaked under me as I stepped out. I felt like the whole thing could collapse at any moment. The front door was already cracked open. I pushed it with my fingertips, and it groaned like it hadn't moved in years. Inside, silence. Dust hanging in the air like it hadn't been disturbed in decades. Furniture covered in sheets. Floorboards soft under my feet. It smelled like mildew and old wood and something else I couldn't place, something metallic. I called out, "Nothing." Then I started up the stairs. Each step felt like it might break through. The hallway at the top was narrow and dark, but I could see the room where the light had been turning on. I stepped in slowly, and there it was, a desk, a chair, and along the back wall, a wall full of photographs, hundreds of them, pinned up with rusted thumbtacks, curling at the edges, all of them taken from across the lake. From the view of that upstairs window, they were of us, of me and my son, on the dock, at the grill, in the cabin. Some were from earlier that week. Some weren't. Some were from what I knew had to be months ago, maybe years. The angles, the clothes we wore. Some even from that winter when the lake had frozen over. We'd come up for just one weekend, which didn't make sense, because I'd never noticed anyone, never seen movement over here, never felt like I was being watched back then. Until now. The last photo on the far edge of the wall was of me, standing at our bedroom window, from just last night. I backed away, heart slamming, and that's when I heard it. A floorboard creaked behind me. I turned. Nothing there, but the door was swinging shut. I ran down those stairs so fast I nearly fell. Out the door, across the dock, back into the boat, rowing with everything I had. I didn't stop shaking for hours. That night I didn't sleep. I kept the lights on, locked every window, sat in the living room with a kitchen knife in my lap, just waiting. But nothing happened. No lights, no movement. The next morning, I packed up early and left. I didn't wait for the end of the rental. I didn't even say goodbye to the town. The sheriff I reported it to barely believed me. He said they'd send someone to check the property. But there was no sign of anyone living there. No food, no clothes, just an empty house full of dust and photos. He said it was probably just some loner squatter maybe passed through recently. But I know that's not true, because some of those photos were old, too old. Someone had been watching us. Not just last week, not just this summer, for years. And I still wonder if they're out there somewhere, watching someone else now, waiting for the next house across the lake. I've been working as a park ranger for a little over 7 years now. Mostly quiet stuff, patrol the trails, talk to hikers, keep an eye out for dumb campers lighting fires where they shouldn't. But this one night, last July, still sits with me. And I don't think it's going anywhere. I was covering a night shift up at the old fire tower near the edge of Allegheny National Forest. Nothing special, just a last-minute volunteer thing. The other guy called out and I figured why not, I could use the extra hours. Plus, I always liked the quiet up there. No cell signal, no people, just trees and stars and time to think. I got there around 6 in the evening, unlocked the hatch, climbed the metal stairs all the way up. You can feel every step in your knees by the time you reach the top. Creaks just enough to remind you how old it is. The cabin at the top is tiny. Just a desk, a chair, a weather log, and an old radio. Window on every side. No electricity. You bring your own lanterns or you sit in the dark. That night, everything felt normal. Clear sky, just a little humid, lots of crickets. I signed the log, checked in with dispatch, then cracked open a book and waited for time to crawl by. Honestly, I kind of liked nights like that. But around midnight, right around when the woods start to feel different, I heard something, faint, almost too faint, a voice. At first I thought maybe I imagined it. It was soft, carried on the wind, but then I heard it again. A girl, calling out, "Hello!" I stood up and walked to the window facing south. That side looks out over a stretch of trees and an old, unused trail that runs down toward the river. There's nothing out there for miles, but I heard it again. "Hello? Can you hear me?" She sounded young, maybe late teens or early 20s. Scared, breathless. I grabbed the radio. "Base, this is Ranger Jeremy at Fire Tower 9. I'm hearing a female voice calling for help from the woods. Any reports of lost hikers?" A few seconds of static. Then dispatch came back. "Negative, Jeremy. No reports. And no hikers should be in that area." "You sure you heard it?" I said yeah, I was sure, even though I wasn't anymore. "Want us to send someone?" she asked. I looked out the window again. It was quiet, too quiet. "I'll check it out first," I said. "I'll keep the radio on." I clipped it to my vest, grabbed my flashlight, and started down the tower. Every step creaked under me. The air felt heavier now, thicker, not just humid but tense, like something was holding its breath. I reached the ground and started moving toward the trail. The girl's voice came again, but closer now, clearer. "Help me." I stopped. It wasn't just coming from the woods. It was coming from deeper in the trees, off the trail. And then she said my name. "Jeremy." I froze. No one was supposed to know I was here. I hadn't told anyone, not even my brother. "Jeremy, please." The voice wasn't panicked anymore. It was softer, almost pleading, like she knew me. I tried to tell myself it was some kind of prank, maybe someone with a speaker, but I didn't believe it. Not really. I stepped off the trail, into the brush. The beam from my flashlight shook just a little in my hand. About a quarter mile in, I found something. An old tent, half collapsed, covered in leaves and dirt like it had been abandoned for weeks. I called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" No answer. I moved closer and pulled the flap open. Inside, it smelled like mold and wet nylon. There was a sleeping bag, empty, a few crushed cans of food, and a notebook. It was full of sketches, trees, trail signs. One page had a drawing of the fire tower. The next had a sketch of me. Same jacket, same hat, same patch on the sleeve. I turned the page. Photos, printed on glossy paper. Most were grainy and taken from far away. Me walking up the fire tower. Me eating lunch in the ranger truck. Me talking on the radio. Weeks of photos, from different angles, different times of day. Someone had been watching me. And then, another voice, behind me, closer now. "Why'd you leave me?" I spun around with the flashlight. There was nothing there, just trees and shadows. The radio on my vest crackled. I jumped. "Jeremy, do you copy?" It was dispatch. I took a breath. "Yeah, I copy. You all right? You've been quiet for 20 minutes. I didn't even realize I'd been out there that long. I told her I found an illegal campsite. Didn't mention the photos. Didn't mention the voice. She said she'd send someone in the morning to check it out. Told me to get back to the tower. So I did. I climbed those stairs fast. Locked the hatch behind me. Sat in the dark for the rest of the shift with my flashlight on and my back to the wall. The voice didn't come back. Not that night. Next morning, 2 other rangers came to look. The tent was gone. No sleeping bag. No notebook. Just a patch of flattened grass where it used to be. They looked at me like maybe I imagined it. Or dreamed it. But I know what I saw, what I heard. That voice still echoes sometimes when I try to sleep. Soft, sad, calling my name, like it's still out there, still waiting. And sometimes, when I climb the fire tower, I get this feeling, like I'm being watched again. I never liked the generator behind the barn. Even when I was a kid, I always found it creepy. It was old, louder than it needed to be, and sat in this rusted-out shed behind the barn that looked like it hadn't been touched since the 70s. My dad always kept it running for storms, just in case the power went out, which happened more often than you'd think out here. We live in rural Arkansas, middle of nowhere, surrounded by woods and fields and not much else. The kind of place where the roads don't have names and the neighbors are half a mile away, minimum. This happened during midsummer, the week my parents drove out to Texas to visit my aunt. I stayed behind because of football practice, and honestly, I just wanted the house to myself for a bit. I thought it'd be chill, stay up late, eat junk, maybe fall asleep on the couch watching old movies. I was wrong. The first night, a storm rolled in fast and hard. Real southern thunderstorm, black skies by 6 p.m., wind screaming through the trees, rain so loud you couldn't hear the TV. Then around 10, the lights blinked once and everything went out. Total darkness. I wasn't too worried at first. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer and went out back to the generator. Took a few pulls, but it fired up like it always had. Lights came back on. Fridge started humming again. All good, I thought. But right after that, my phone died. I figured it was just low, but when I plugged it in, nothing happened. The charger light didn't even blink. And the landline, yeah, we still had one, was completely dead. No big deal, I told myself. Just a storm messing with the lines. I lit a couple candles in case the power went again and eventually fell asleep on the couch. Then came 3:28. I woke up to silence. That thick, unnatural kind where you know something's off. No hum from the fridge, no distant drone of the generator. I looked at the clock on the microwave, it was blank. Grabbed the flashlight again and headed out back. The generator was off. I had to walk through wet grass in bare feet, which didn't help my mood. But when I got to the shed, the door was open, just slightly but open. I always shut that thing tight. We had raccoons out here. Maybe wind, I thought. The generator took a few more pulls than usual, but eventually coughed back to life. As soon as it started, I had this weird feeling, like I was being watched. Not from the trees, but closer, from the barn. I glanced over. Nothing, just darkness. But I didn't stick around. I locked the shed and went back inside. Told myself I was just tired and creeped out by the storm. But the same thing happened the next night. Almost down to the second, 3:28 a.m., generator off, silence in the house. This time I noticed something different. A rake was missing from beside the barn. One of those long, heavy-duty ones we use for clearing brush. I checked the yard, but there was no sign of it. And again, that feeling, like someone was standing just outside the edge of the porch light, waiting. I barely slept after that. The third night, I stayed up on purpose. No movies, no music. Just me on the couch with a baseball bat and a flashlight. I watched the digital clock on the oven tick minute by minute toward 3:28. My heart was pounding. I didn't even know what I was expecting. And then, right on cue, the hum of the generator stopped. I didn't rush out this time. I waited by the window, listening. There was a breeze outside, but nothing else. Then I caught movement by the barn. Not big, not dramatic, just a shape. Dark, low to the ground. Moving slow. I stepped onto the porch and aimed my flashlight. It flickered at first, then caught something on the grass. Footprints. muddy, fresh ones, coming out of the woods and heading toward the shed where the generator was. But what chilled me wasn't just the footprints, it was that there were no tracks going back. Whoever or whatever walked and hadn't walked out. I followed them in the morning after the sun came up, just to be sure I wasn't dreaming. They led from the treeline to the shed, then stopped. No return path, no prints around the barn or into the field. Just nothing, like they vanished. I unlocked the shed to check the generator. Something wasn't right. I'm no mechanic, but I know when something's been tampered with. The casing on the side was slightly open, like someone had pried it loose, and wedged inside was a small digital timer. It looked new, clean, out of place in the rusted guts of the generator. That's when I realized this wasn't a coincidence. Someone had set it to shut off at 3:28 a.m. on purpose. But why? And how long had it been there? We hadn't run the generator in months. Not since late spring. And the last time we did, it worked fine. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the bat across my lap, all the lights on. I turned off the generator manually at midnight, wanted to see what would happen if there was no power to cut. And at 3:28 a.m., nothing. No footsteps, no movement, no missing tools, just quiet, too quiet. Then came the knock, not on the front door, on the back window, like deliberate, like someone tapping with a single finger. I didn't move, couldn't. It was one of those moments where your body just locks, every muscle frozen. I finally forced myself to look, nothing there. But the tapping had left a smear mud, maybe on the glass, just one. That was it for me. By sunrise, I'd packed a bag and driven to my uncle's place 2 towns over. I stayed there until my parents came back. I didn't tell them everything, just that the storm had fried the generator and I didn't feel safe alone. My dad brushed it off, said maybe an animal messed with the wiring. I didn't argue. But the timer was real. Kept it. Still have it in my drawer. It was set to activate exactly at 3:28 a.m., 3 nights in a row, with a delay script to restart the generator at 3:43. Whoever set it wanted me to be awake in that gap. Wanted the power to go out, the house to go silent, right before whatever that was came close. And they wanted it to feel like coincidence. I never figured out who it was or how they got in without leaving tracks. We live miles from the nearest paved road. No sign of a break-in, no signs they took anything. Just presence. Sometimes I think it wasn't about hurting me. Not really. It was about watching. About seeing how long it would take me to notice. I moved out last year. I don't go back much. The barn's still there. The shed too, but I haven't touched that generator since. And sometimes when I can't sleep, I check the clock without thinking. And every once in a while it's 3:28, and the lights flicker,